today we have a great conversation for you. It's all about connected roads, connected services, and partnerships pioneering digital alerts in Europe. I've got two brilliant gentlemen here joining me. I've got Gareth Evans, Director of Strategy and Business Development for HAAS Alert. Lovely to see you.
Thank you.
And Stuart Raybrook, the Group Innovation Manager of Standby Group. So welcome and thank you for joining me today. So could you both start by introducing yourself and your organisations, please? Gareth.
Absolutely. So yeah, my name's Gareth, or I go by Gaz. So I run essentially the European side of the business for HAAS Alert. Effectively, what we do, we connect anything that is a potential road hazard, and we try to inform drivers ahead of time of what those hazards are. So be that an approaching emergency service vehicle, maybe a stationary tow truck, or even alerts such as wildfires and flood alerts as well.
Stuart.
So we're Standby Group, and we're best known for the equipment inside emergency vehicles. That'll be things like power controllers, user interfaces, the blue light bars themselves, the flashing lights, and of course the data that those things generate and then get into the cloud.
And you're here to announce a new partnership. Can you tell us what's brought HAAS Alert and Standby Group together?
Well, me and Stuart actually met 2 years ago, and when we first came into the European market, it was one of the first events that we actually attended, and I think there was just that mutual connection straight away of seeing how we operate and how we work, and first and foremost our role, and we feel our job is to help protect the emergency service crews and staff. And with the work that Stuart and the team do, and being such a global and European presence, we just thought there was that clear mutual understanding of what we both wanted. But then from a technology perspective, seeing that where we are from HAAS Alert and where Standby in the trajectory that they were going, it just seemed a really good match, and 2 years in the making.
Yeah, I think it's a match made in heaven almost.
Yeah.
If you do say so yourselves.
we have a lot of the estate in the vehicles, vehicle fleets in Europe, and then, for instance, just looking at the UK, emergency police vehicles. We have over 90% of UK police vehicles with our controllers inside them. And we can get that data, if we can get that data in front of the public through Gareth's cloud system, that's a huge benefit to everybody. It's a win-win situation, and that's the final vital link that they're generating from our data. So it's a fantastic match.
And Gareth, so HAAS Alert is best known for its safety cloud. So for those who haven't come across it before, what exactly is safety cloud and how do digital alerts work?
So in the context for the emergency services, think about connecting assets to the Safety Cloud platform. As I mentioned before, the key area that we look to do first is add an extra level of safety for the emergency services. If blue lights, sirens, cones, high-vis jackets worked absolutely perfectly, we wouldn't exist. But unfortunately they don't. In the world that we live in now, there's much more distracted driving. Cars are designed to isolate you from the outside world. They're designed so you're in that really comfortable bubble. And car makers have done a great job of that. But the challenge then is how do we make sure that people are really understanding their surroundings? And in a world where people are that much more distracted, how can we inform drivers that, look, there is something up ahead? So what we do with Safety Cloud is look to attach anything that might be a potential hazard for road drivers. But ultimately, those road users might be hazards for the emergency services. So you'd be driving down the road, you might have no idea that there's an emergency vehicle behind you or up ahead, just to get that notification in the vehicle ahead of time to say, look out, there is something up ahead. So be that emergency service vehicle, or I mentioned that the rescue and recovery sector. So they're not designed, these alerts aren't designed to make sure that people are swerving out the way last minute. So someone in their vehicle is getting an alert 15 to 30 seconds in advance, so they can be much more aware of their surroundings. So they're not looking at their phone, they're not taking that sip of coffee, they maybe aren't shouting at their kids in the back, but their eyes are up on the road and they're being informed of the situation that is potentially ahead of them.
And Stuart, can you explain what the Standby ICE Cloud is and how it connects to HAAS Alert's systems?
Yes, the ICE Cloud is a system that we put into the cloud, which collects data from multiple platforms that we produce. So we have, for instance, the power controllers I mentioned already. 90% of UK police cars use power controllers, but they also use things like telematic systems, video systems, standalone blue light systems, and so on. And all of these generate data in different ways. And we want to present that data in a common format for HAAS Alert. They have protocol, we need to communicate on that protocol from whatever platform we're using. So our ICE Cloud is basically taking our protocols from our different devices in the vehicle and converting them into a protocol which will speak to the HAAS Alert system. So that, it could be that a customer has our power controller and they already have that blue light information, the position of the vehicle, the speed of the vehicle, the heading of the vehicle. That's all the vital stuff that HAAS Alert needs. So we can take that power controller data and send it over the air into the cloud and onto Gareth's system. But equally, they may have one of our CCTV systems, for instance, or a telematics system, which also has blue light information. It also has GPS information. It also knows heading and so on, but it's a different protocol. We can take that protocol, we can put it in the same format, we can pass it to Gareth. So he can get data from standby group, and he doesn't need to know which bit of kit it's come from. It comes from a piece of standby kit, and it ends up in his system.
And so from a customer's perspective, say it's a police fleet or another emergency services, so what's the benefit of using Safety Cloud through standby?
It's all about added value for us, I think, and particularly when it comes to safety. So a customer, an emergency operator, is already using this technology to improve their safety. They want to be seen, they're putting a blue light on, they're making a noise, they're hoping the public see them, but more often, well not more often not, but regularly, they're not seen. People are distracted, they have their music too loud, they're not looking at their mirrors, and this is added value. It's another way of giving that same alert to all the people around them, are saying, look out, there's a vehicle nearby, it wants to get through, it's an ambulance, a fire engine, or whatever. So it's added value, added safety.
And I think from our side is the conversations that are having in the UK, our estimate is around about £150 million in damages to responding emergency service vehicles in the UK. So some of that is an occupational hazard, but a lot of that is, ideally completely avoidable situations. I've spoken to many police forces whereby they've been going to an incident and they've been hit by a member of the public, and that scenario doesn't just have a cost associated to the damaged vehicles, but then you've also got the whole situation around that. You've got the health and well-being of the staff, the health and well-being of that person that might have just been going to the shops, and the last thing they wanted to do was hit a responding police vehicle. So when we start to look at that impact, and if we can reduce that cost only by a tiny amount, we look at it from that cost-benefit analysis of, if we just look at it from a numbers perspective, which I don't think you should do, but if you look at it purely from a numbers perspective, if we can reduce that by only a few percent, all of a sudden the services start to pay for itself.
And you're soon to go live with your first police force, so what can you tell us about that?
Very, very exciting. So potentially the first in Europe to activate through Safety Cloud. One of the things that we recognize at HAAS Alert is when we are working with different providers or different services, when we're working with maybe an ambulance service or a fire service, often it's very binary. You're going somewhere, you've got your blue lights on, you want to tell the world. But we also appreciate when you're within the police forces, sometimes if you have your blue lights and sirens on, the last thing you might want to do is tell a car in front of you, hey, that we're coming. So working with Stuart and the team, making sure that we're working with great technology providers that are going into the service allows especially the police forces to be a bit more selective on some of those fleets and also be able to act quicker. So we do have our own hardware, but to put that in multiple vehicles, can be very, very cumbersome. But actually working with operators that, Stuart mentioned, being able to have that direct access instantly with 90% of the police forces, in theory, overnight we can make a massive difference, and that's what we're aiming to do.
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, it's a very exciting project coming along here, and we've had a long-established relationship with this particular customer, and they're already using quite a lot of our equipment inside the vehicle. Now, being a police force, it's slightly different to an ambulance or a fire service, because sometimes they will have to use a blue light, but they don't necessarily want it to be seen in a wide area. So if you imagine an example, you might have an officer on his way to a job where he has to be covert. He doesn't want to be seen, but he gets to a junction which is clogged up. It's a crossroads, there's traffic in all directions, the lights are red in the wrong place, but he has to get through that junction. He may just briefly put his lights on, put his siren on, just to clear the junction so he can get across, but he doesn't want people at the place he's going to know that he's on the way. So we have a covert capability inside police cars, which means they can go covert, They can put the blues on, it won't broadcast, it won't end up in Gareth's system under those covert circumstances. So they have best of both worlds. Like when they want to be seen in a wide area, get an alert a mile ahead or whatever, dead easy. That's the standard way of operating. And if they want to go covert, no problem. We have the covert button, they can use the blues as normal and it won't go into the system. They're safe. Different fire and ambulance, because pretty well always the fire and ambulance want to be seen.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the big difference.
So that's interesting because you touched on kind of the emergency services maybe a bit more broadly there. Okay. And so we've heard about safety, efficiency, and the cost benefits. What impact do you anticipate for UK fleets adopting Safety Cloud?
I think with, we're a US company and we've been around in the United States now for actively doing what we do for 5 or 6 years. The shift in the landscape of how vehicles are connecting to each other is key. And I think when we start to look at the likes of the Netherlands and some of the activations in Europe and what we're doing in the United States, the importance of the UK being ahead of this is vital. We don't want to get in 5 years down the line and we are the only country in Europe or North America that is not connecting to passenger vehicles. We've got a Skoda on our stand. It's one of the first car makers to go active with digital alerts and Safety Cloud in Europe. And there's many more car makers to come. So now people will be buying these cars and going, well, hang on a minute. Why is my car not alerting me? Why was I stuck in traffic? I didn't know there was an ambulance behind me. I would have quite happily have moved out of the way, but I had no idea it was there. And all of a sudden, I think there might be a start of a switch of looking at other countries going, well, why is the UK not doing the same? So for me, the UK is ready to be the leader of this. We just need to look at that adoption. And a lot of the time, it's a lot of people coming into a room together to say yes, and not maybe sitting around a table for a year going, we could do it, we might not do it. So for us, I think that's where it comes in with the emergency services. Do we want to be a leader and showcase to the world how good we are? We've got a small little island, but we've got a lot of people. We've got very small roads and we've got challenging road conditions. Can we make it safer? Can we make interoperability better? So for me, it's can we be at the forefront, especially in the UK?
Yeah, and I think from our perspective, the UK is a great place to start. We're an innovative country. We've got a government which is driving data forward as a strategy, and this is a perfect data product. It's a great place to start, but as a European group, standby group, we have offices in Sweden, Germany and France as well, so we can then take this technology wider into our group, into other countries, which is exactly what we want to do, of course, and we have a cloud strategy to take that forward with, so it's a very exciting time.
And how do you think that this all aligns with the digital first strategy across the UK's emergency services?
I'll be quite biased, but I think it's right up there. It's one of the things that we talk about is the essence is if we connect something instantly, so instantly it can be in navigation apps and it can be in vehicles. We something can be switched on and then it can be there. The big area that especially within the UK that we look at and across Europe is the interoperability. So a perfect example, we've got a scenario in one part of the UK and that police fleet might be using standby with Stuart. The ambulance fleet might be using something that's completely different, and the fire fleet might have our hardware in it. Because our Safety Cloud is completely agnostic, if that's all going into the Safety Cloud, if someone wanted to share data with each other, we're effectively one click away from doing that. And that isn't an exaggeration. So looking at that agnostic and the interoperability, so when we think of digital first, this doesn't have to be really, really complicated. We designed the Safety Cloud to do exactly that. So if the police force that we'll be going live with Stuart, if they would like to say, oh, we'd love to provide this information to maybe National Highways or the local authority, as long as they also would go, yeah, actually this would actually benefit everyone on the road through Safety Cloud that we could do that. But the other side of this is we always talk about no one can do this on their own. So again, us doing this alone as HAAS Alert, I don't think would ever work. So working with partners that are really specialists in this area and working with the local authorities and working with the government is also really key as well.
Yeah, I agree. This gives us an opportunity to get this vital warning data into places that it hasn't reached before. Gareth's giving us that gateway. We've got this warning information. Clearly our customers generally want to make people aware that they're on their way to an emergency, and if they can make people aware in a better, clearer, more informative way, then everyone's a winner. And this is the great thing. It delivers the data directly into the public's vehicles and hits it in front of their faces.
And digital alerts are already built into some cars, and obviously we're moving towards more connected vehicles. Like, how do you see this kind of technology evolving over the next few years?
I think when we start to look into the not, I say the future, but it's not, because it's here right now.
Yeah.
So again, when we look at those passenger vehicles, we've got that, the adoption of safety cars through multiple car makers and multiple brands now. The future isn't autonomous vehicles in 10 years' time. There are completely autonomous vehicles in the UK right now. There are shuttles in city centres everywhere. And my question is that connected to an emergency service vehicle? And yes, it might have the sensors and the LiDAR, but what we've seen in the United States with a lot of these autonomous vehicles is when there's an emergency service approaching, that having that extra 30 seconds or a minute and being connected to these autonomous vehicles can also help that maneuverability of those as well. So you've got a challenge in the UK where the average age of a vehicle is around about 8 years old, and you've got these completely autonomous shuttles, and then you've got a lot of money coming out of the government that wants to adapt the AI functionality and autonomous vehicles live on UK roads. At what point do we say, where does the emergency service come into that conversation? At the moment, I've not seen it. I'm happy to be proven wrong, but again, that's where we think that we can come in and help this, where if Stuart says, well, actually, we can be connected to 90% of the police service, and I can go, well, through Safety Cloud, someone can actually get that information and make sure that we can feed it into the right channels. All of a sudden, we can start to advance that. So it's the here and now. 8-year-old vehicles, people are using Waze, Apple Maps into new vehicles, but in the not too distant future, it's the landscape is going to change very rapidly, and it already is. So just making sure that we're future ready as well in the UK and in Europe and beyond.
Agreed. I think this is one of the great things that we're noticing. In my role as innovation manager in the business, I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward for the next 3 to 5 years to see what's going to happen. And the big change we're seeing now already is software-defined vehicles. Yep. By 2030, 90% of vehicles are going to be software-defined. They're going to be driven from a processor, which software defines every part of that vehicle's function. And so we have to make sure we can interface with that. And a lot of the data that's generated and used in these emergency applications has to get into Gareth's Safety Cloud, and we're looking at that interfacing all the time. How do we interface in the car to the existing systems to make sure that we can tell it, for instance, the handbrake's on, is the window open, is the door open, is the boot open? How do we integrate those things into our control systems along with the blue lights, get that data fed back into Gareth's system?
And finally, very quickly, what if there's emergency service leaders out there who are undecided about digital alerts, what message would you like to leave them?
I think to enact change, you need to be confident to make a decision. I think a lot of the time there's and rightly so. You want to make sure that there's the theory, the evidence behind this, and we've got lots of that in the United States, which is great because that's where we've been most active. But to make change and to make that step forward, I think technology is always that scary step. Is you can take a look at this, and between both myself and Stuart, it doesn't have to be that binary approach. If you came to myself or Stuart and said, look, we'd love this on our fleet, we don't sit in front of you and go, it has to be in every single one of your vehicles or you can't have it. If you wanted this in one vehicle, you could have it in one vehicle. If you could have it in half the fleet, you could have it in half the fleet. So you can look at this as either a staged approach, a pilot approach. There's no set way of doing this, and we appreciate that we need to bring people along with this journey. But for us, the more people that are active, the more that we can then get the backing from the government, the more backing from the independent research institutes to say, look, we've now got connectivity. We've had it for a year or half a year or 2 years. Let's look at this collectively and see the impact that this is having. But until we make that first step, we can't do that. So that for me is probably be brave enough to take that step, but also knowing that there's no binary approach to how you have to do something.
Well, brilliant. Thank you so much, Gareth, Stuart. Lovely to have you here with me today, and thank you for all your amazing insight.
Thank you.
Thank you.